Good morning and welcome to this week's recruitment discussion with Jump. And this week we are talking about stop selling the same old recruitment services. Clients are looking for something different. And as always, when we start to break into these sessions, I want to give some stats. And I'm going to give some stats on services so people can sort of understand. So spend some time sort of reading into sort of stuff from PwC and people like that. So 86% of buyers are willing to pay more for great customer service. I should just leave it there, really, and say that's it. That's the whole stats that we're giving from there. 81% of organizations are already citing customer experience as a competitor differentiator. So, are our services really different? Are we really differentiating our services from there? In fact, the retail report from PwC found that the number of customers investing in omni-channel experience for their clients has jumped from 20% to almost 80%. So are you selling contingency, exclusive, retained, talent advisory, RPO, etc., etc.? Are you selling perm and contract and temp? What are you offering? Because if you're offering it just under one banner, is it really benefiting the client from there? So, for example, 57% of customers wouldn't recommend a business with a poorly designed website or mobile service. And according to Statista, 59% of all internet traffic worldwide now comes from the mobile. So just think about how that, and think about your company and what your mobile presence is like. So it's no surprise when they say 84% of companies who claim to be customer centric are now focusing on the mobile customer experience. So what does your shop window look like? In the future customer experience report from PwC, they surveyed 15,000 customers and found that 1 in 3 customers would leave a brand that they love after just one bad experience, while 92% would absolutely abandon a company after 2 or 3 negative interactions. So if we think how we look and look at your placement ratio, your fill ratio, what's that say about our service? Is it good or is it bad? And more than 85% of customers want to experience proactive communication and contact from a business. So how do we do proactive recruitment, proactive communication, and when we're just doing transactional recruitment? I suppose is a way of looking at it. So today we've got Dave and Paul. Heather, not too sure where Heather is today, but she's probably around somewhere. But we've got Dave and Paul. So we're going to dive straight in with some questions. First question then. How do you believe the evolving needs of the clients have impacted the traditional recruitment service model, and what strategies have you implemented to address these changes?
Okay, let me kick this one off then. I think what clients are now asking of us as an industry is a great deal more than candidate availability. They want from us consultative services. In other words, I think they're looking to us to give them information, data, statistics, reports. They want information on what's going on in their world and how we can assist them regarding a whole range of recruitment and employment services. It's evolving in that direction. It has been for some period of time now. And it's something that we should be embracing as an industry, because it takes us much closer to that consultative model than we've ever been before. And why is that happening? And I'm sure we'll talk about this. It's predominantly because, of course, the introduction of a whole range of AI and technology has meant that many employers now are able to find their own people to a large extent, and are asking now of us, aside from providing us with people, what else can you give to us? And I think it's very much about that close relationship that we need to develop with our clients to truly support them in areas that include finding staff, but also support them in their efforts to find and retain good quality colleagues.
Yeah, it's absolutely true, isn't it? The way that clients buy from us now has changed, and I guess is going to change as business evolves. So they expect a lot more for free than perhaps we've ever given them before. They just want it bundled in a different way. So they still want a person to start 2 weeks on Thursday or whatever, but they also want some data around that. And if you multiply that by 10 positions, or you multiply that by a team, or you multiply that by a bit of interim, a bit of search, a bit of perm, a bit of contract, whatever it may be, the expectation is that we will have deeper conversations with our clients. And I guess the technique, to answer your question, Howard, is that we've got to understand that we need to be much more intelligent in our conversations with our clients and our prospects to show them that we can deliver more than a person or a few people or a team of people, because that's what they expect. Goes back to your point about customer experience. We may not be able to fill the job today, but instead of that, we may be able to give them a whole load of data that they haven't got, that nobody else has provided, retain that capability to continue to have a conversation, and in 3 months' time, we get a much bigger gig from them.
I think it's...
And it also depends for me, Ad, on how we reward and drive our people. If we reward and drive them transactionally, they will behave transactionally, and they will behave in the same way they always have done, which then belies the way that customers buy.
I think it's a simple thing, is the evolving needs of our clients and our traditional services. They just don't trust us. And that lack of trust, is something. But I think what clients have started to change is they want to build trusting partners within their supply chain. And obviously we're part of that supply chain, but I don't think we've actually grasped that yet, that we need to do that. And what you're two are talking about is exactly right, about data from the market, how their competitors doing. But it's the data that affects, I think, their brand attraction and their ability to find candidates or fight for talent. Is critical to fight for talent at the moment. So I think helping clients understand their brand attraction to get their candidates into a recruitment channel quicker is really important. And I think the fact that we don't understand that yet, that we've got to sort of go with that data to their clients. And what you're talking about, we both said, they bring us with jobs and still wants to fill that job in 2 weeks. But we've been talking about this for weeks and weeks, that we know that those jobs have probably been planned 3 months ago, 6 months ago, maybe 12 months ago in some cases. Yeah. And yet we are still looking at eyes down recruitment, what's happening today. We're not looking at what's happening in the future. So we can start to actually build active talent pools that would take those jobs. And I think that's the difference, is that our evolving services have to take away from the eyes down recruitment service that we're all giving at the moment to a more prolonged view of what their requirement and needs are. So then we can invest building their brand attraction. We can invest in building a talent pool, which will then mobilize their workforce quicker and faster when they need it. And I think we've yet to grasp that real seriousness, when we talk about that. So if we look at that, if you could share examples of services or processes within the recruitment agencies that successfully have remodeled their business, what would that look like? And what were their sort of results?
Well, I mean, I'll give you an example where one of my clients has really changed the way he is working with his team, with his clients, and that is around moving towards becoming a retained and exclusive recruitment business rather than a contingent recruitment organization. And that's been evolving over the last few years. What we've found is that clients have actually really welcomed the changes, I think. His hit rate on the roles he takes when is being retained, has been literally one-on-one. I mean, every role that he's taken on board, where he's the exclusive partner of that particular organization, that role has been filled. And he's getting, as you would do in these traditional models, getting money up front. So he's got clients who are putting skin in the game, committed to filling the role, and they are providing video interviews for the clients to review, arranging video platforms for them to talk to the candidates. There's a new, and I haven't got time to go into it in great detail, but new fee model and so on. And it has made a huge difference to the organization, a huge difference. I think has elevated their brand to a level that it's never been reflected before. And I think for the consultants, morale-wise, it's been a real fillip because they've been able to work on stuff that they know they're going to fill, as opposed to contingent, where, as we all know, are you going to fill it? Well, the majority of the time you don't. Your fill rate's generally about 1 in 3, 1 in 4, something in that order. So it's made a big difference, and I think it's helped him a lot in terms of retaining people too. That's an example. I've got plenty of others, but that's a great example of, I think, how things have evolved with at least one of my clients in that direction.
And to add to that, Paul, an example I can give is of a client that I work with that has changed the way they pay their consultants. And the way they pay their consultants, 25% of their comp is based on customer feedback. And let me tell you, the moment you involve your customer in deciding whether or not you've been successful, makes you work harder, get a better experience, or hopefully deliver a better experience, and then you're rewarded for it. Now, I'm not saying that every single company can do that, and for some it doesn't work, but for many it absolutely would work if you had an element of bonus, because unless you change the behavior of the people at the desk, and most people on the sales side of our business, in the front office, if you want to call it, are rewarded on success. And if you put the customer into that part of it, then you've got a better chance of changing your model and therefore getting and winning more business.
So I think it's interesting, isn't it, that I've worked with clients where we've started to build a specific recruitment model, breaking it down into each individual sector and what they look like and how those sectors look. And I have a client that's started to really do this, and he's gone from a 35% fill rate, now looking at the jobs that he takes on when they've sold the new services and how their new services work, to an 84% fill rate. So again, it's what you're saying, Paul, there is that the consultants are more engaged because they're filling more jobs, and less of their time is working on jobs that they're never going to fill. They've also got that down to a 73% is one CV. So the client is now really trusting their capabilities. They're sending one CV, that's getting an interview, that's getting a placement.
Yeah.
So it's a really interesting sort of viewpoint that, breaking your services down and looking at how you can remodel your services starts to have a huge effect, on how the clients perceive you. And I always think this is a real interesting view, is that we perceive the client, as we keep saying, as a prospect. They perceive us as a suspect. But now they see you as a prospect because they have different types of services that they can choose. And that's what everyone is selling at the moment. You look at any product that's sold online, they have 3 or 4 different versions of that service that you can buy, that they are choosing the right service for the right position. And that is also reflected in their rate and their capability of filling that role. And that's a huge difference to what they were doing before. And it was a simple 2-day session to break down their services, break down their clients, and then apply the right service to the right client and the right sell.
Yeah.
So if we look at that, in what ways have you observed client purchasing services differently, and how are the teams, or how are your teams adapted to align with these changes in buying habits?
Okay, so I'll give you an example, which I think everybody listening will probably be very well aware of. And I think that clients are now assessing our businesses not just based on their ability to find the right staff and their, if you like, their ability to get close, but I think importantly what their cultural fit is all about. And you'll know from your own examples, the people listening, that you're regularly now being asked questions around your attitudes towards and policies towards DE&I, and BAME and LGBTQ and so forth, and attitudes towards sustainability and so forth. And we said, I think at least a year ago, to everybody listening to these webinars, don't take this lightly. When you receive tenders going forward, and proposal documents, requests for information, RFQs and so forth, be aware that a very high percentage of the questions you're going to be asked will be based upon your attitudes, your policies in these areas. And, at the last minute, desperately trying to find a policy that the REC can give you, or APSCO or one of the other associations, is helpful, but it's unconvincing. You have to be committed to these areas. Organizations that want to work with you now are very much asking questions because they need to feel that their suppliers are aligned to their own cultural commitments. And to my mind, that's a big change that's been coming for some time. It's not just the big corporations either. We used to think that they were the only organizations that were asked these questions. It's not that. I'm seeing those questions being asked even by pretty small clients now. So this is, I feel, an area where big changes are occurring in buying habits, and it's not something that we can flip off and think of as something we'll do if and when we get to it. You really have to be committed to these areas now.
If you think about that stat there about people going more mobile and reviewing people's websites, there's a stat that says that from Harvard Business Review that said that 64% of every purchase is made by viewing the website prior to speaking to the end person that's going to sell the service to them. And so they've made their decision based on the website. So has your website got the mission statement, the values, etc., written on them that they want to align themselves to? And so it becomes part of your shop windows. It's a really interesting point, that, Paul, that that it is becoming a more value-based sale, rather than a price-based sale.
Yeah. And the thing is, clients want to know stuff about workforce trends, about workforce management, about skills development. And we as recruiters have access to all the various associations, through the work that Jump does, through the work that other partners will do. We have access to that stuff. It's just that often we don't take the time to package that up or tell the clients the stuff they need to hear. And because we don't tell them, then they don't know. They don't make the intelligent buying decisions that they need to make, or they go to a supplier that is giving them the information they want. So the world of recruitment, to Paul's point earlier on, is as much about advisory as it is about delivery. So at the moment, the fastest growing area of workforce is over 50s. More over 50s are coming back into the workforce. 12 months ago, that wasn't the case. Do our clients know that? Are we giving them the information they need to make a decision? Instead of having one of these, you can have two of these, one for 3 days and one for 2 days. It doesn't mean that they may change their mind about how they want to hire, but giving them the intelligence, giving them the data, giving them the trends, giving them the analysis means you're having a conversation and you're more likely to make that sale in whatever way it looks like.
I think clients are looking for the right service for the right position. And we tend to sell recruitment traditionally as one product. We sell it once to the client. Once the client has bought it, irrespective of their demands, we simply sell the same product at the same price over and over again. But if we go back to that initial conversation about what we've done with certain clients, they sort of looked at their different services and gave a view of, this is what you get. This is our fill rate on contingency. This is our fill rate on exclusive. This is our fill rate on retained, etc., etc. And it was almost pushing to the client and saying, look, our worst service, which is our contingent service, which is the one that you want, has the worst fill rate.
Yeah.
But there are certain roles that you should put in there because everyone will have those type of candidates. There are certain roles that you need to have retained. So having that different supply man, and that sort of goes back to having omni channels of recruitment services broken down for your clients, so they can see which channel that they should be going in for each individual role. And therefore it makes that decision a decision based on success rather than based on price. And if they realize that, by going retained, you're going to get a 95% chance of filling that role, irrespective of the duration to fill it, okay, more clients buy those services based on those type of things because they understand what's actually happening. And that goes back to that data point of having the data. But we tend to sell recruitment to every client and sell it in one big chunk. And the client doesn't understand the differentiators of our different channels that we've got that we could sell, because we're not good enough at actually selling those services in that fashion.
Yep.
So when it comes to recruiting, what is your perspective of the key differences between selling and negotiation? And how do you see these distinctions affecting the fee structure and, more importantly, the client satisfaction?
Because I think it's a good question. I'm going to use the old cliche: selling is telling. I think negotiation is all about listening. When I think about it, I mean, as you always take the mickey out of me over this, I've been working in recruitment since 1976. You can do the jokes. Come on, this is your moment.
It was a warm summer, Paul. It was a warm summer.
It was. You know, it's a long time. When I look at the fee structures that we had, even in those days, you know, the Alfred Marks Bureau, Brook Street Bureau days, and I look at common fee structures today with recruitment businesses, spot the difference. There's virtually no difference. You know, the way in which we charge fees to clients has not changed a jot, really. The percentages may have done, and you may have seen the bandings change a little bit. But I suspect that there's limited difference, and I find that interesting, to put it mildly. The clients I work with, and I know this is true of you guys, we talk about customized fee structures. We have different attitudes to fee structures. It depends greatly, and this is back to the point about negotiation, about what it is that your clients need. What is it they want from you? There should not be a prescriptive fee structure that we apply to every transaction and every client that we work alongside. They have different needs, different attitudes to the services we provide. We should be very open-minded about what we're going to provide to clients, not just in terms of the service that we provide to them, but in terms of how we can compile our fee structures. And we talked earlier about retained, exclusive as an example. And of course, in the old days, inverted commas, exec search was always at a more expensive level. But I would argue that in today's market, giving thought to providing maybe a slightly cheaper service in exchange for retained or exclusive opportunities is something to think very hard about, because we've already agreed that when we get those opportunities, we fill them. You need to have an open mind, and that comes with listening. And how do you listen? You have to be in front of your clients on a very, very regular basis to understand what exactly it is they want from you. And then you depart from those meetings, you give strong consideration to what it is that you could provide to them, and you go back with your proposals, which includes a customized fee structure. So, you know, the old days of terms of business, the old Alfred Marks days of TOBs, as we used to call them, I think that's pretty dated now. You have to have a completely different attitude to what it is you're going to charge, dependent upon specific requirements from a singular client. And that's the way I view it, and it's the way my clients view it too.
And yet, Paul, I still hear people running agencies measuring their consultants on how many calls they've made in a day or how many calls they've made in an hour. And in many sectors, the candidates and the clients don't want to receive calls. What they want is some data. What they want is some market information. What they want is something that positions you as the seller, as the recruiter, in a more intelligent way than everybody else. And then they'll pick up the phone to you and have a conversation about it. And so sales forces, often on a sales floor, it can be a lot quieter than it used to be when everybody was having the phone, but you could be doing more intelligent work. So then as a leader, you've got to ask yourself, are you measuring your performance in the way that your clients buy your service? And that could be a wholesale change in the way you think.
See, it's interesting, the difference between selling and negotiation. To me, selling is talking about and getting the client agree to what service that they require, but for each individual position or different type of position that they have. Negotiation should only happen once we've agreed that, and therefore you can negotiate a price for each individual sector from there. So there is a distinct difference. But then you start to think about what drives price. That's supply, demand, and competition. So it's interesting. My stepdaughter's going to live in Australia at the end of next year. And we were looking at prices of when we should go out and, if we were going to go out to Australia to visit and see it, etc. But the prices haven't really changed in the airline from when I went to Australia in 91. You can still buy a two-way ticket, okay, for 600 to 900 quid. And so the prices haven't changed until you start to look at the different types of seats that you can get in the aeroplane. You can go cattle class, business class, a semi-first class, first class. So it hasn't just gone from first class to cattle class. They've now got 3 or 4 different classes in between that. And that is where they're making their money. And yet we sell a deal, and we sell our deal once to our clients, where we should be thinking about 2 ways of selling our deals. We should think about, here are our recruitment services, here are the different prices for our recruitment services, but here is our overall arching service for duration. So we want to sign a 12-month, 18-month deal with you, and these are the different services that go inside of that deal. So we can pick and choose from there, but we've got an overarching service based on duration, not based on price, and then a different deal based on service levels that they want, depending on the type of requirement that they need. So I think that difference between sale and negotiation is getting the client to understand the services that they need and require per role, not just generalistic across the business, and then negotiating a different price for each one, but then looking at an overarching agreement based on duration so you can lock the client in for longer. And that's going back to what the clients are looking for. They want to create a better, longer partnership with our recruitment agencies rather than a transactional partnership that they have at the moment. So here's a question. It's interesting to sort of put this into sort of context then. Have you encountered situations where more transactional approach to recruitment has negatively impacted the client relationship? And if so, obviously, how have you addressed those?
I see it all the time. I'm sure you see it all the time. The vast majority of our client relationships in our industry are transactional, contingent, and that suggests to me always that there's too long a distance between us, the supplier, and them, as it were, the clients. And we don't have an understanding of their specific needs. And so what tends to happen, and we see it all the time, is our consultants send CVs, digital CVs, often a number, limited understanding of the culture of the business, if any understanding, limited understanding of the depth of the not depth of knowledge of the job description, probably have a limited understanding of the candidates' details and their experience and abilities and so forth. And it's that mud against the wall situation that we've seen so many times over the years. Does it impact our relationship with clients? Of course it does. There's no differentiation from a client's perspective between our service and all the other agencies they've sent those vacancies to. We're just a CV chucker. And that, I think, obviously impacts relationships, obviously impacts our reputation. The only way, as we've talked about it endlessly, I consistently talk about this, the only way you can remove yourself from those transactional contingent relationships, which are no use to you really whatsoever. And if you look at your hit ratios between the vacancies you take and the placements you make when you're in those, I hesitate to say relationships, you can see the distance. One in what? One in how many CVs gets you an interview? One in how many interviews gets you a placement? It's long shots. So of course it impacts you. How do you change that? You've got to get in front of clients. You have to get client meetings. You have to spend time in front of organizations, understanding their requirements, understanding their cultural needs. And it's not just one meeting either. You need to be regularly meeting with your clients. I always tell people that the maximum period of time between one client meeting and another, maximum, emphasizing that word, is 3 months. Any longer than 3 months, and you're already out of touch with what's going on with your customer. So does it have an impact? Of course it has an impact. it means you have a limited relationship. You're at the base of the pyramid. You've no chance of building trusted advisor relationships with your customer. Not a hope. You are just one of many other agencies. And those days, and we've been saying it for years, are dated. You have to start providing consultative services, and it hinges entirely upon the efforts you make to get in front of clients and spend time with them to understand what it is they want from you. This is related, of course, to the previous questions about customized fee structures and so forth. All of those things come about by you guys being very, very close to clients on a constant basis, every day, every week.
And the thing is, Paul, in order to make space for that, for most companies that have got, say, less than 20 people, they can't deal with as many customers as they currently deal with. Because on a transactional basis, you can deal with everybody you want.
Yeah.
And if you want to develop a true understanding and a true partnership and an advisory status, you've got to somehow create the space and the reward and the mechanism for the behavior and the performance to be able to do that. And there's a danger, if you're running a company, that there's a cost to that. Well, hold on, if I'm dealing with 100 customers and I can make 10 placements, if I only deal with 50, am I going to make 15 placements or am I going to make 5? And that's the discussion that as a leadership team within your business, you've got to have. How do I have a better relationship with less customers and therefore enable me to deliver more? And that's what's going on in the way that the work is changing now, because actually our buying customers want less relationships. They don't want hundreds of people calling them every day. They don't want anybody to call them. They want to build a relationship where they call them. So you've got to be one of the trusted people. So how do you get to that stage? And that's a lot of the stuff that we're working on with customers right now.
But it's that transactional approach, isn't it? And I'll give you a prime example from my computer people days. We had a government contract to supply IT into one part of the government. Probably had in excess of 400 contractors out working. And so I've gone down to see the client with the client manager, the person who was running the account and looking after the account. As we're walking through this government body, I spot a contractor who I had placed probably about 4 or 5 years ago. Just clocked him, thought, oh, wonder what he's doing here, and left it at that. Had a great meeting with the client, really loved what we did, etc., etc. Went away and spoke the following day to the candidate. The candidate said, I'm now working as a high-end consultant on £1,500 a day, and I've been on that government body for about 18 months. So I asked him which part they were at. So they were a very high-end service level part of the local government. So when I went back to our client manager, I went in to go speak to the guy that we just met. And his comment was, I didn't know you did that. I thought you were just a body shop. And the fact that they don't know what services we can actually provide them, even though that was on a government contract, and therefore we'd explained all our services, the fact that we're not going in and talking about our services, what we can do, they were contracts, the average margin per week off those contracts, once we broke into that sector when we knew it was there, was £1,500 a week. And we'd been missing out on that for 4 or 5 years. So how many we missed out because that transactional approach to the client said that we were just a body shop, as your view, Paul, was a CV chucker, and we're just chucking CVs at them rather than a professional recruitment services that's supplying high-end contractors. And I've got 2 or 3 stories very similar to that where they just thought we were a body shop and not an actual high-end service organisation that can provide the top end. And so it's important to actually understand that your transactional approach impacts your client's perception of what service that you can provide. And so if you're providing a low-end transactional service, why would they come to you for a high-end headhunting retained service, etc.? So we've got to think about how we change that. So if we looked at that, then what strategies or tools have you found most effective in upselling additional services to your existing client base? And how has this contributed to an agency's growth of revenue?
I mean, this absolutely relates to the previous question. And you know, when people, and there are lots of people listening today who will have relationships with clients, but will know very well that they not only do they not have all of the business that they specialize in, but there'll be other business that client has that doesn't come in their direction. Now, it might be as simple as they deal with you for permanent recruitment, but they're not asking you to find them temps or contractors, or the other way around. Or it might be that you work with them in Birmingham, Manchester, London, but they have other locations around the country or indeed abroad that you're not working with them to assist them in those spaces. You know, we know very well now that the world is a terribly small place. You can, and maybe many of you are already, working with companies elsewhere outside of our shores, and it's not difficult to do that. We do that at Jump. We have clients all over the world that work with us across all sorts of time zones. So, you know, just because you're based in a location doesn't mean that you can't be an international or indeed a national business. So this always comes back to the thing we've just talked about, which is, how do you know whether you can do more business, whether you can upsell or cross-sell, if you spend 5 days a week sitting staring at your screen and looking at the four walls that surround you? The answer to that question is you don't. You've got to be in front of clients, and not just, as I said earlier, once every now and then. You know, it's a regular thing. It's embedded, to use that word, in the processes that you hold dear in your business. And I mean, I said it a moment ago, never leave a client meeting without arranging your next meeting. Don't leave the building. Make sure it's in no more than 12 to 13 weeks time, or maybe it's next week. But if you are going to upsell and cross sell, make very certain that you and your people are consistently in front of your clients. There's a huge amount of opportunity, even in this very challenging market that we're in, for businesses to grow. And it's often sitting right under your noses. But working from your offices at a distance, using old-fashioned methods of picking up a phone and sending CVs isn't going to get you that upselling and cross-selling opportunity. You have to be very visible. And it's easy to be visible these days. Look at us. We're doing that right now. We're all sitting on a webinar talking to each other. There's no reason why you and your people can't be extremely visible, either face-to-face or using modern technology. We have no excuses, and the old-fashioned model of sitting in an office is just, it's done. It is completely done, and it relates to everything we've been talking about throughout this particular broadcast. It's about being very visible and being very consultative.
And to your question, Howard, what we may regard as additional services, our clients regard as expectation of services. If you go and spend time with your clients and say, in the world of talent, what services do you buy? I guarantee they'll come up with a list easily, a list of 20 different things. And we may provide one or two of those. So if we want to grow our businesses, the expectation, therefore, is, can we get into some of those other services that clients just expect? And that could be compliance, that could be competency testing, that could be another form of testing, that could be workforce solutions, it could be planning, it could be training, it could be development, it could be a whole load of things. But if you could add one or two more of the things that you buy or that you sell already, you're going to get growth in your business. And the reality is, particularly in UK recruitment, where margins are often quite tight, it's the other services that bring you greater reward, rather than placing a person here or placing a person there. So it is, to Paul's point, worth having those longer, in-depth conversations about what do you want, what do you buy, what do you expect from us, and then developing your service offering around that.
I think it's understanding the buyer's mindset, isn't it? And what the buyer's mindset is actually like. And if you think about, let's think from a recruitment point of view, let's say you buy a CRM.
Yeah.
They want you to sign up for 12 months, 24 months, 48 months. The longer you sign up, the better deal you get from them. But when the biggest complaint that we have about CRMs is we don't know how to use the CRM because we're not training the person to actually use the CRM. We then think about how we upsell our recruitment services, is what we've been talking about all the way through this webinar, is that we do not educate our client constantly on the services that we have. We educate them once at the beginning of the relationship, and that's usually a very low-end educational, it's a primary education that they've got of our services, and therefore we become complacent, and the client becomes complacent and doesn't think that we can supply different types of services, and therefore will go to different types of agencies for different requirements and different needs. So we've got to start to think if we can sell longer term contracts, and then as Paul is saying, we can go out and meet our clients on a more regular basis, understand that their mindset of how they are buying services, and actually have our services broken down so they understand it, then upselling becomes quite an easy prospect.
And Howard, I think you've done a pretty decent job in explaining, starting to address Beverly's question, where she's saying getting in front of clients now is difficult. People are turning them down. How do we overcome that? And I think it is, to a large extent, what you've talked about, which is explaining, or as you use the phrase, educating clients as to why it's of benefit to them that we should meet them. They can see the benefit from our perspective. That's not difficult, but they don't understand how they would benefit. And I think it's because their perception of recruitment businesses is that we are, and I'm sorry to say it, in many instances, CV chuckers. That's what we do. We send candidates over, often real long shots, not particularly well researched, not particularly well matched. And why would they spend time with people that do that? And to your points, both you guys, this point around what do we provide to clients over and above good quality candidates? Well, our clients don't know that because we don't educate them. We're not close enough to them, even from a sort of a phone call or a Teams or Zoom meeting perspective, to explain that we could offer them so much more than just sending them CVs, send them candidates. And because they don't understand it, of course, they're going to turn us down. I'd also add to that point, sorry, Dave, just to complete this point, I'd also add to this that very often and I see it quite a lot where in recruitment companies, there's a demand from the owners or the directors to their people, you've got to get in front of clients more often, which is correct. But I don't often see the owners and directors of those businesses themselves spending a lot of time week in, week out, talking directly to customers. As an industry, and I'm definitely broad brush stroke here, as an industry, we are not as close to our customers. We're listening to our customers to the degree we should be, and it should start at the top.
But it's that client viewpoint, isn't it, that they don't see the value and therefore they don't want to meet you. Yep. But the viewpoint is that we are transactional and only looking at what recruitment is today. Have you got a job for me today that I can fill? We're not having that longer conversation about their workforce planning, so we can start to bring talent to them quicker and doing that. So understanding there is, think about the stress that a client goes through when they need to find somebody is huge. But yet we could alleviate that stress by having a longer runner to find that candidate. But we're also stressed trying to find that candidate because the client's under pressure, we're under pressure, the client's going to go elsewhere. But if we had a longer period to do that, and that's having a close relationship with your client. So to finish this off, just to put it into a perspective, can either of you then share a case study or a success story of recruitment agencies that have successfully differentiated themselves in the market by redefining their services to meet the changing client demands?
Yes, I think I've got a number of clients that work extremely hard to differentiate themselves from their competition. And I think because the common theme today has absolutely been about get closer, be a consultative service. What we've done in those clients is to redefine the roles of the people working in the business. Again, it may be another conversation for another day, but again, I talked earlier about, how stuck in the mud we are around terms of business, for example. I think you could genuinely say that's true in terms of the way we we get people to do their work. They're a permanent consultant, they're a temporary consultant, or a contractor consultant, and this and that. I think you've got to be stepping back from that and looking at what it is that we would provide our clients with better quality service. And that 360-degree model, and we've talked a lot about this over the last 3-4 years, is in many instances now a hackneyed model. It needs to change. We need to review how we give our clients and indeed our candidates a better quality service. And I think that means stepping back and redefining the roles of the people that work in our organizations. It also helps with recruitment and retention. So where I've got examples of clients who have redefined themselves, I would say it's connected to them stepping out of their models, their own recruitment models, and starting to redefine what they want their own people to do by changing job descriptions, changing what people's responsibilities and roles are, but not from an inward perspective. They're looking at it from the perspective of, what do our clients want from us? How do we provide better service to them? How do we give our candidates greater support, greater help? And we have the talent in our businesses to do that. But it's often extremely difficult for us to really reach out and support people when we consistently try to fill 360-degree roles.
Yeah, and just conscious of Paul's answer and time, giving one of the things that I've got clients who absolutely targeted on working with 50% less clients. They've changed their business model to say, we're dealing with too many clients, too much transactional work. We want a deeper relationship with fewer clients. And having set that out as a strategy, they've then put in place, to Paul's point, they've then put in place ways of doing that, ways of rewarding, ways of behaving, ways of developing that relationship. But that's taken a little bit of time. And 3 months maybe, but that takes, you've got to bite the bullet a little bit to make that happen as a leader. But if you do that, you end up with better quality relationships, and therefore your business grows better.
Yeah.
About 3 months ago, I was working with a client on a pitch where they were pitching against 5 other clients, 5 other agencies for a client's business, a lot of business. It was a big pitch. The client had been bitten in the past by shoddy retained services, and our client was very nervous about pitching in. So once we broke everything down and we pitched in a very, very broken fashion, this is each individual service, and laid out what that actually looked like, the client said, and the feedback from the client was very simple. He said, out of the 5 agencies that pitched, you were the only one that we actually understood what your service truly was. The rest was, we knew we got a good recruitment service and we were probably buying the people, which is what a lot of people talk about. You're buying us. They said, we now truly understood the service and how the service worked. No. They were the only agency that didn't go in and pitch a price. The client came back and said, we want that service and that service. What are the prices for that service? Because it was all about getting the service in first and understanding that. So it's a real sort of point that says sometimes it's not about the price. It is about the service that the client's expecting, and the client has to understand the individuality of each individual compartmentalized part of our service to actually work. So I think that's been a really interesting conversation and a really interesting discussion about what service is. Friday, the next edition of The Brutal Truth is out, our newsletter. If you've not signed up to the newsletter, if you go to my LinkedIn page, you'll find the newsletter somewhere on that LinkedIn page. So sign up to it. This week, we're talking about why clients and candidates ghost recruiters. We're talking about salary history and why we should stop asking for salary history. And we'll touch again on last week's webinar. It's about finding candidates in plain sight. If you want me to write about something else, or other people from Jump to write about something else, send me topics. We're happy to do so. Next week's discussion, we'll talk about why client retention, as well as acquisition, is really important for growth when exiting a hard marketplace. Dave, Paul, thanks so much for your input.
Thanks, Howard.
Input, much appreciated. Ladies and gents, thanks for your time. We look forward to seeing you all next week at the same time, same place. Thanks very much.
See you, everybody. Keep well, keep safe.
Have a good week, everyone. Thanks, guys.